This is where we fight! This is where they die! And these shields, boys!
Welcome, one and all, to the Inner Sanctum. Here we render our judgment on the biggest winners and losers in the YouTube debate sphere. The prompt on the scales tonight: is Christian nationalism good? Andrew Wilson represents the positive, and Connor, aka Counterpoints, the negative. Now, without further ado or hesitation, let's weigh their arguments.
You can't have these sorts of rights if you have everybody enfranchised, because they just vote to take them out whenever they want. And part of the amendment process that you guys did was you enfranchised everybody, and now you're fucked. You're all fucked.
Andrew is absolutely correct. They wanted this, now they have to suffer the consequences, but yet all they do is complain about the things in which they created themselves.
Because what ends up happening is, since you forced voting blocks for special interest, is Christians are now forming their own, and they're taking over the government, and it really fucking pisses you guys off. But it's like, you did it to yourselves. You all did it to yourselves, and then you come and you blame us. You're like, well, wait a second. What about my Constitution? You fucked that up a long time ago. You guys fucked that up a long time ago. The second you started mandating universal suffrage, you fucked the Constitution right. It was never meant for that. It was meant for a population of moral people, and it was meant for people who had stake in the nation, not for every fucking asshole to just go and vote their conscience.
Andrew points out that John Adams stated our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people, implying that without a shared Christian ethic, self-governance falters. This isn't about theocracy, but recognizing that secular alternatives, such as Enlightenment or rationalism alone, have often led to more relativism, where rights become arbitrary and society unravels. By prioritizing Christian values in public policy, such as the sanctity of life, traditional family structures, and charity, nations can preserve the very principles that enable their success.
Okay, so number one, I have no problems going into history. If you want to ignore theology, we can. If you want to talk about truth, we can. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we nailed on, since it's like Christian nationalism is good, I guess is like the positive statement within this like dynamic. And you're right, it is a status quo versus the non-status quo.
Yeah.
So I gave my definition of Christian nationalism, which I think is necessarily exclusive of Jews. I think it's necessarily exclusive of Hindus. I think it's necessarily exclusive of Sikhs or atheists or whatever. And so you're right that it's a tribal voting bloc within the United States of America, but I'm not calling to end that tribal voting bloc. I'm arguing about that voting bloc getting so much power that they effectively institute a Christian theocracy that's against the liberal and libertarian project of the United States of America. That's what I'm advocating against.
I understand.
Essentially, his argument is he doesn't mind Christians being in power just as long as it's not too much power. That Christians don't change so much of the government to where it no longer looks like the modern government that we have today, that the status quo doesn't change. Essentially, it's almost like a Theseus ship paradox. And what a Theseus ship paradox basically says that if you remove like the wood, the planks, certain aspects of the ship, if you take them off of it, is it still that ship? And that's why it's a paradox, because on one hand, yeah, it's still fundamentally the same ship. It's just more or less updated or changed in certain aspects, but the core foundation of it is still the ship itself.
What we're arguing about here is political paradigms. The political paradigm of the status quo versus the political paradigm of Christian nationalism, and what Christian nationalism is and wants for the country, and if that's good. The thing is that whether or not it's true has no bearing really on anything ultimately, because whether or not there's any truth in the Constitution and the rights which you're given has no bearing. They're axiomatically correct to the people who hold them, and that's that. So we can see this, for instance, when we have the Declaration of Independence. We see these axioms come out, and what do they base the axioms on? God, right? These are axiomatic rights which are given to you. We believe that these are based on God. So without God, this God character, there is no axiom from which to ground rights.
Moral cohesion in a pluralistic world. In an era of rapid globalization, cultural fragmentation, and ethical pluralism, Christian nationalism offers a unifying moral compass. Without a dominant religious framework, societies risk descending into tribalism where competing ideologies, identity politics, materialism, or authoritarian secularism vie for power, eroding social trust. Christianity, with its emphasis on universal truths like human dignity, forgiveness, and justice, provides a transcendent basis for laws and norms that transcend individual or group interests. Advocates like Stephen Wolfe in the case for Christian nationalism argues that it isn't exclusionary but protective. A Christian informed state can tolerate other faiths while ensuring the majority's values shape the common good, much like how secular states implicitly prioritize humanistic ideas.
Real quick though, I don't. Yeah, let me hit that real quick. So I agree that rights are pretty much only as good as you can enforce them, right? So freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, right to self-defense, limited government, and a constitution. That doesn't mean shit if you live in an authoritarian society. So it's only as true as we believe them to be true. However, I would say that we can observe the way that authoritarian societies operate. We can observe the way in
I
which
mean, they operate
libertarian
fine.
societies operate,
They operate
and
fine.
we can make a moral judgment on which one we prefer.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that you can make judgments based around preferences for societies you wish to live in. I'm not really so sure that this is not that the progressive status quo isn't particularly authoritarian. I think it is, and I think we just have to look back to COVID to note if you're thinking about a fascist dystopia, what are the things you think of? They can come in and shut your business down whenever they want to. They can make you wear state mandated clothing, right? Which they did and called masks. They can make you have travel papers so that you can go to and from work, which they did, called COVID passports, and they can mandate things which you do with your body from external uses, like they did with vaccines. They can also shut down your church whenever they want for the interest of the public good. And the thing is like, that sounds way more like a fascist dystopia than fucking anything I've heard Christian nationalists propose, to be perfectly frank with you. On top of that, Connor, let's point this out. That's the fascist dystopia. Okay. We lived in it, and it was all promoted by the status quo leftists. And the thing that's really funny about this is like, what is it that Christian nationalists are really proposing that you're even against? The truth is that you guys wanted universal suffrage. The progressives wanted it in the worst way, and they've been fighting for it, and they're still fighting right this second and under the status quo to expand it. I've heard it even like 16-year-olds should be able to vote. That's a real thing. You see it in Western Europe already. It was passed in a couple of countries there.
Yeah, I don't think 16-year-olds should vote. 18-year-old, I mean, preferably 25, but 18 for now.
And that's coming here too. They want to expand it to people who have been disenfranchised because there were felons and all sorts of things, which should prohibit them from voting. If you give a stake to every human being, Connor, right, then what's going to end up happening is they're going to be able to vote out and vote in rights, meaning things that they prefer whenever they feel like it. Well, if your largest fucking voting bloc is Christians, which it is, then you're at the mercy of the thing you did, dude. You're at the mercy of that.
Yes, Connor, you're at the mercy of the things that you advocated for and continue to advocate for.
That the point is that based around joint preference, we can easily restrict behaviors in society that we don't find preferable. Because society, hang on,
authoritarian societies,
because society suffers because of it. And so the thing
that's just true of society in general.
Well, the thing is, though, Connor, is that if that's the case when it comes to universal suffrage and that's a demand which is made, you can't then get upset because one of the voting blocks happens to be the largest is fucking Christian and they're going to push their agenda through. You fuckers did it to yourselves. So how do you, I don't know how you reconcile that.
He can't justify his position. He's double speaking. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth.
The only thing that you've told me is if Christians get into power and they do things I don't like I don't know, deplatform leftists, then I won't like that. If that's your whole thing for what is bad, then I would just counter and say, okay, but if they're going to do it to us and they have been doing it to us, What the fuck are we supposed to do exactly? Except combat it. Hang on, bro. Except combat it the same exact way by seizing the means of power so that it can't be done to us. And if it's the case that we have to do other authoritarian things like, oh, I don't know, shut down OnlyFans. Cares? I don't fucking care. Good. Use the authority of the Christian government and shut that shit down and shut the porn sites down too. I don't fucking care. And neither does anybody else. They don't fucking care either. What? I mean, what? It's just Coomers can't fap and so fucking Christian nationalism bad? Like, what is the argument here for Christians being in charge bad? What?
And that sums up the debate. It's more gish-galloping, equivocation. Connor could not come up with a logical, even philosophical, or even rational reason why Christian nationalism isn't good for society. Now, from a practical standpoint, embedding Christian principles in nationalism yields tangible outcomes. Policies inspired by biblical ethics, such as welfare systems, rooted in charity, environmental stewardship, and just war theory, have historically fostered stability and innovation. In contrast, purely secular regimes such as Soviet atheism or modern hyper-individualism often leads to dehumanization or cultural decay. Christian nationalism argues for Christianity as the civil religion that motivates civic virtue, volunteerism, family stability, ethical business practices, and they all correlate with active Christian populations. Data from sources like the Pew Research Center shows that nations with strong Christian influence, as an example, Poland or Hungary's recent policies, report higher national pride and resilience against external threats without devolving into oppression when balanced with democratic safeguards. In essence, the best pro-argument is that Christian nationalism isn't about domination, but preservation. It safeguards the soul of the nation by anchoring it in timeless Christian truths, ensuring liberty, order, and human flourishing in ways that secular alternatives cannot match. This vision sees Christianity not as a tool of power, but as a bedrock of a truly good society.